Welcome to London Property Digest, your essential 10-minute audio recap for staying informed on London's property market.
Sounds good.
We've got some news today that could really shake things up.
Oh, yeah.
Airbnb is launching a new program right here in London.
Interesting.
What do you think about that?
Well, it's certainly a bold move. This isn't just another vacation rental scheme.
Right.
This time they're wading into the long-term lettings market by allowing tenants to sublet their apartments on Airbnb for short periods.
Okay, so how does this actually work? Are we talking about any tenant anywhere in London?
Not exactly. This is starting as a pilot program with 1,500 flats in 3 specific buildings owned by Greystar.
Right.
Tenants in these buildings will need their landlord's approval to sublet.
Makes sense.
And there will be limits on how many nights they can list their place.
So it's not a complete free-for-all.
Right.
But I can already hear some people saying, hold on, isn't this exactly what people have been worried about with Airbnb? Doesn't this just drive up rents and make it harder to find a place to live?
Yeah, I mean, that's a valid concern, and it's certainly been a point of contention in other cities.
For sure.
But Airbnb is framing this program as a way to actually help renters
Okay, how so?
by allowing them to offset some of their living costs.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, you can see how this could empower tenants, especially during a cost of living crisis.
Yeah, definitely.
But on the other day, you have to wonder if it could backfire and actually exacerbate the issues it's claiming to solve.
Yeah, that's the million-pound question, really. And it's important to note that this isn't happening in a vacuum.
Right.
Cities all over the world are grappling with the impact of short-term rentals.
Right. I was just thinking about that. We've seen places like Barcelona and Lisbon taking pretty drastic measures to rein in Airbnb-style rentals
Yeah, for sure.
because of worries about affordability and the changing character of neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
What are some specific things that are happening there?
Well, Barcelona, for example,
What?
is actually aiming to shut down a staggering 10,000 Airbnb-style apartments by 2028.
Wow.
And in Lisbon,
Okay.
they've temporarily stopped issuing new licenses for short-term rentals altogether.
Really?
Yeah,
So this new program in London is going to be watched very closely, I imagine.
definitely.
What do you think Airbnb is hoping to achieve here, both in London and potentially beyond?
Well, their messaging emphasizes helping renters, but it's also a strategic business move.
Right.
They've noted that while their bookings are up, overall, they had a slower start to the year
Yeah.
due to some weakness in U.S. consumer demand.
So this program could be a way to tap into a new market segment and diversify their revenue streams.
Precisely. And they've made it clear that they're not just stopping with these initial buildings in London.
Like,
They have their sights set on expanding this program to other UK locations as well.
this feels like the beginning of a much bigger story, doesn't it?
Definitely does.
I'm already curious to see how landlords, tenants, and even the wider community react to this new development.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out.
For sure. Let's delve a bit deeper into the potential implications,
Okay.
particularly for the London rental market.
Sounds good.
Yeah, you mentioned the potential impact on the rental market.
Huh?
I think that's where things get really interesting. We've already talked about concerns about rising rents,
Yeah.
but I wonder about the power dynamic between landlords and tenants. Could this shift the balance in any way?
That's a really important point to consider. Traditionally, landlords have held most of the cards in the rental market.
Right.
They set the terms of the lease, decide whether to allow subletting, and ultimately have more control over the property.
Right. So how could this new program change things?
Well, imagine a scenario where tenants have this additional potential revenue stream
Okay.
through Airbnb.
Yep.
It could give them more leverage when negotiating with landlords.
You mean they could potentially use it as a bargaining chip
Yeah.
to push for lower rents
Exactly.
or more flexible lease terms?
Exactly. It's like saying, hey, if you're not willing to work with me, I have another option to generate income from this property.
Right.
It could even lead to a shift towards shorter-term leases that better suit the needs of today's more mobile workforce.
That all sounds very appealing from a tenant's perspective, but I can also see the potential for problems. What's to stop landlords from simply raising rents, knowing that tenants now have this option to sublet and offset the increase?
Yeah, I mean, that's a valid concern,
Yeah.
and it's something we'll need to watch closely. There's always a risk that a program designed to benefit both sides could end up being exploited by one party at the expense of the other.
Right, and it's not just about the financial aspects. What about the impact on the buildings themselves and the wider community? If you suddenly have a lot more short-term guests coming and going, Could that lead to friction with long-term residents?
Absolutely. Increased noise security concerns and a more transient feel to the building are all potential downsides that need to be considered. And then there's the wider question of whether this kind of program could exacerbate the already strained relationship
Right.
between long-term residents and the tourism industry in certain areas.
So it seems like this program could be a bit of a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
There are potential benefits for both landlords and tenants, but also a lot of potential downsides and unintended consequences that we can't ignore.
It's a complex situation, and it's important to remember that this program isn't a magical solution to London's housing challenges. It's more like a new variable in an already intricate equation.
One that could have far-reaching implications for how we live and rent in cities like London.
Earlier, you mentioned that Airbnb is facing some financial pressures.
Yeah.
Despite growth in bookings,
Uh-huh.
could this be part of a larger strategy for them?
That's a perceptive observation. And it highlights how this program isn't just about addressing the needs of the London rental market.
It's also a strategic business decision for Airbnb.
Right.
They're essentially blurring the lines
Okay.
between short-term and long-term rentals, creating a hybrid model that could give them a competitive edge and diversify their revenue.
So in a way, they're not just disrupting the rental market, they're also disrupting their own business model.
Right.
It's like they're trying to become a one-stop shop for all your housing needs, whether you're looking for a place to stay for a weekend or a year.
That's a great way to put it. And if this program is successful, it could have a ripple effect far beyond London.
Oh, wow. In what way?
Imagine purpose-built apartment blocks designed specifically with this hybrid rental model in mind.
It's almost like a choose-your-own-adventure approach to housing, where tenants have the flexibility to switch between long-term and short-term rental arrangements depending on their needs and financial goals.
Exactly. And it's a powerful example of how technology can reshape not just how we live, but also how we think about property ownership and the very concept of home.
It's a lot to wrap your head around, and I have a feeling we've only just scratched the surface of this story. But before we get too carried away with future possibilities, let's bring it back to the here and now. What does this all mean for our listeners who are directly impacted by the London property market?
Good point.
It's easy to get lost in the big picture, but ultimately this all boils down to how this new Airbnb program could affect people's lives on a very practical level.
Absolutely. For renters, the potential benefits are clear.
Yeah, what are those again?
The possibility of lower rents,
Right.
more flexible lease terms, and a new way to generate income.
Right.
But it's crucial to weigh those benefits against the potential risks.
Like what specifically? What should renters be thinking about?
Well, first and foremost, it's important to remember that this program is still in its early stages. There's no guarantee it will be widely adopted
Right.
or that it will deliver on its promises.
So don't go rushing to your landlord demanding a rent reduction just yet.
Right. And even if the program does take off, there's always the chance that landlords will find ways to circumvent the intended benefits, as we discussed earlier.
Like raising rents across the board to account for the potential subletting income.
Exactly. It's a classic case of supply and demand.
Yeah.
If landlords sense an opportunity to increase their profits, they're likely to take it. And then there are the potential downsides of actually living in a building with a lot of short-term renters coming and going.
The noise, the security concerns, the feeling of living in a hotel rather than a home. Those are all valid concerns, and it's something that potential renters need to consider carefully.
It's almost like a trade-off, isn't it?
Yeah.
More flexibility and potential financial gain in exchange for a potentially less stable and predictable living environment.
It's a trade-off that some people will be willing to make while others won't. And it's going to be fascinating to see how those preferences play out in the London rental market.
And what about landlords? What's your advice to them as they navigate this new landscape? I think it's crucial for landlords to approach this with a balance of open-mindedness and caution. On the one hand, this program could offer a way to attract and retain tenants in a competitive market.
Okay.
It could also provide an additional revenue stream and streamline certain aspects of property management,
Right.
but it's important not to rush into this blindly and inflict. Landlords need to carefully consider the potential implications for their properties, their existing tenants, and the overall value of their investments.
They also need to be prepared for a potential shift in the landlord-tenant dynamic.
Right.
If tenants have more leverage, it could lead to more negotiations and potentially more pushback on certain terms and conditions.
That's a really important point. This program has the potential to disrupt the traditional power structures in the rental market,
Yeah.
and that could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on your perspective.
I think the key takeaway here is that this is a situation to watch closely. We're in uncharted territory, and there are a lot of unknowns. But one thing's for sure, This Airbnb program has the potential to shake things up in the London property market in ways we haven't seen before.
It's a reminder that the world of real estate is constantly evolving, and those who stay informed and adapt to change will be the ones who thrive.
And that's where London Property Digest comes in. We're dedicated to keeping you up to date on all the latest trends, insights, and analysis you need to make smart decisions about your property journey.
So whether you're a renter, a landlord, or simply someone interested in the London property market, be sure to subscribe to London Property Digest for the latest updates.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Airbnb and its potential impact on London lettings. Until next time, stay informed and stay ahead of the curve.
And remember, knowledge is power when it comes to navigating the ever-changing landscape of the London property market.
Subscribe to London Property Digest for the latest updates on the London property market.